I like that backdrop, Celeste.
I know. I put that up there the other day when I was on for another one. It's a photo from the swamp.
Cool.
Better than my dirty kitchen cabinet.
Very good. I can't hear them very well. Can you hear them very well?
I can come up a notch.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Why don't we start? I call this meeting of the Township Committee to order for Thursday, August 13th. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on June 12th, 2020. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on June 12th, 2020. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on June 12th, 2020.
Thank you, Greg. Can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewald?
Here.
Mrs. Fondacco?
Here.
Mrs. Swartz?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Here.
And Mayor Kelly?
Here.
We have one.
Very good. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Very good. Can I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
And a second? We'll give
Second.
Stacy. Very good. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, the only item on this portion of our public meeting is the adoption of a resolution to go into executive session. And we will come back at 5:30 for the remainder of our agenda, our public agenda. But could I have a motion to adopt the resolution to go into executive session?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Greg?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fondacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
And the purpose of this is for the litigation in the matter of Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan docket number MRS-L-1659-15.
Thank you, Greg. So for anyone in the audience, we will be going to a different Zoom meeting to do our executive session, but we will come back to this Zoom ID number at 5:30 for the remainder of the public portion of the agenda. And thank you very much. If everybody would close down on this one, and we'll reconvene at the other. Thank you.
Yes, as Bob was just saying, Alex, Verizon was here a couple days ago trying to, because our circuit was down from the storm for a while.
Okay. Apparently they didn't fix this part of it, huh? Okay.
I guess, yeah, because as you know, like every time I would call you, it was the police number.
Yeah.
Our calls were.
Yes, I know, I noticed that.
I tried calling a friend of mine, and then he sent me a text message later. Why are the Chatham police trying to call me? You guys see a commercial being made up there in Mountain View?
Yes.
Hershey commercial. Yeah, it had to make up with the weather. Very good.
Greg, the Bruins are on at 8.
Did you say Bruins are on at 8?
Bruins are on at 8. Just saying.
So that means adjourn at 7:45? Or no later?
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, can you close that? Thank you.
It's a little slow copy. Hey, it's hockey, we'll take it.
Can't get through a meeting without a request for cash in my credit card.
I think the Islanders are still in the mix.
Alex, can we start with what we have?
No, is the HDMI connected?
Yes,
I'm not getting a signal.
that's from the HDMI or from the?
Yeah, for the Zoom part, I'm not getting a signal.
Because yeah, because the sound's coming out at least.
Yeah, I can hear like the microphone stuff. Well, I mean, either way, what's gonna be posted online is gonna be the Zoom meeting for now.
Okay.
And then live, people will just see like here, they won't see the Zoom part.
But they'll see us.
Yeah, they'll see you, but they won't see the people that are not you. But they'll hear them.
Get out of your way.
Is it's on the right setting? That's odd.
Please bear with us while we are we live yet?
Not yet. Yes, on Zoom, not on cable yet.
Right, so you're, okay.
Yes, other than maximizing that window, yeah, 'cause it shows on the computer that it's hooked up. I don't know if there's, with the weather and everything, if there's.
So I should go to maximizing this to a single screen? 'Cause that
Well,
one,
no, if you keep it on there like that, that way, if things start working in there, I don't know if with everything that we've had with the remediation and the weather, I don't know if that screwed something up.
okay. But your sense then is that
At the very least, we can get the sound.
the audience won't see it on Fios. If anybody, and what will they see on Zoom out in the audience land?
Well, if you're wondering if you can pull up the participant list, then if it can't be seen on TV, then go ahead and pull that up when you need to.
I was thinking about what the audience will be able to see. If they're on Fios, they won't be able to see it on cable. But if
Yeah,
they,
but people in Comcast would see the normal video from in the room.
and then if people are trying to log on with Zoom,
And they'll see whatever's on Zoom.
okay, they'll get a full look at the full experience on Zoom.
Yeah, people on Zoom will still see Zoom. People on cable will just see the normal cameras in the room.
So I had to redirect them to Zoom if they're having trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyone who wants to talk should be on Zoom anyway if they want to see it in a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, whereas Comcast, that'll, let them watch and listen.
Okay.
For those of you on Zoom, we're having HDMI difficulties with our hookup for video.
So Alex, can we start with what we have, or how?
I mean, we can start, but the people at home who are watching on TV won't see the Zoom people.
That's okay, as long as they see us.
Yeah.
We'll just have to.
They'll see us in the,
But they can still hear, right?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so then we're,
Okay.
that's 90% of the battle.
okay, I think we should start. Okay, 10 seconds, Alex, and then we'll start rolling with what we have.
Could you speak to Dean and how are we doing the 914?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public meeting of the Township Committee for August 13th, 2020. Would you please join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I'm told that due to the storm the other day, the FiOS connection may not be working correctly but however, the Zoom and Comcast is working fine. This meeting is being held remotely as a virtual meeting, and I will begin as we normally do with information on how to participate remotely. If you are watching on cable TV, you can participate in any of the public comment sessions by dialing any of the phone numbers which are listed on the agenda and which will be shown on your TV screen when we get to the public comment sessions, and then dial *9 to raise your hand. If you are watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions on how to raise your hand. When you raise your hand and are recognized, please start by identifying yourself by name and address for the record. All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will wait until each speaker has finished before responding to them. We have 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda, plus a public hearing on an ordinance up for final adoption. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 5 minutes during each of those public comment sessions. Looking ahead, our next Township Committee meeting on Thursday, August 27th, will be our final meeting to start at this early 5:30 p.m. time slot. After Labor Day, we will return to our traditional 7:30 p.m. meeting time, starting with our September 10th meeting. And while we are talking about schedules, Chatham Township, like many towns, does not yet have a date when the municipal building will be reopened to the public. If you have business with the township, please telephone the appropriate municipal office, and we have a good system for drop-offs and pickups outside the main entrance. Also, like most other municipalities, we do not yet know when we can return to township meetings with the public physically in attendance. We will eventually return to normal, but until then, we must be guided by our health officials, by the governor's executive orders, and by the capacity limits of our meeting room. That ends my comments on Zoom procedures and scheduling, but I also want to report tonight that our affordable housing process continues to move forward. The agenda tonight includes the introduction of 2 ordinances pertaining to the acquisition of the affordable housing site at 522 Southern Boulevard. Both ordinances will be explained in more detail when we get to them on the agenda, and a full public hearing on each will be held prior to the final adoption at our meeting in 2 weeks. But in summary, Ordinance 2020-14 is the bond ordinance to fund the acquisition of 522 Southern Boulevard. And Ordinance 2020-15 authorizes the township to negotiate to acquire the property by purchase or by eminent domain. Our goal is for the township and the property owner to agree on a fair purchase price without the need for condemnation. The township received 2 important pieces of information this week to help clear the way for those negotiations. Number 1, we received a formal appraisal for the property at 522 Southern Boulevard, placing its fair market value at $3,685,000. Number 2, we received a formal notice from Charlie Brown's Restaurant that they will not be reopening for business. In other affordable housing action, the Planning Board will hold a hearing this coming Monday, August 17th at 7:30 p.m. to determine whether 522 Southern Boulevard meets the criteria for an area in need of condemnation redevelopment. That meeting will be held remotely via Zoom. Check the Planning Board agenda, which will be posted on our township website for details on how to participate. Also, at Monday night's Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board will be considering the redrawing of the subdivision lines for the Arbor Green affordable housing at the skate park site. This has been explained previously, but in a nutshell, it is basically reducing the size of the footprint of the township property that we're conveying to the developer for the use of the affordable housing site there. And then looking farther forward, on September 17th at 1:30 p.m., Superior Court Judge Michael Seagaus will hold a fairness and preliminary compliance hearing on the township's amended affordable housing agreement. The hearing is open to the public, but it has not yet been determined if it will be held in person or remotely. Once that is known, a notice will be put on the township website, or contact Township Attorney Albert Cruz. Now to begin our agenda, and our first item of business is a special resolution recognizing the centennial of the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. As the only man on the Township Committee, I think I'd better delegate that to one of my colleagues. Deputy Mayor Ness, would you like to do the honors?
I would be honored to do so. Thank you. Resolution 2020-188, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in honor of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Whereas the bold, courageous, and powerful women who fought for the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution on August 18, 1920, and certification on August 26, 1920 by the U.S. Secretary of State deserves special celebration on the 100th anniversary of this achievement. Whereas New Jersey was the 29th state to ratify the 19th Amendment on February 9, 2020, and whereas New Jersey holds a special place in women's suffrage history, as thousands of New Jersey women advocated for the right to vote on the streets, in the newspapers, in the state capitol, and throughout the state. And whereas the 19th Amendment did not guarantee suffrage for all women, including Native American women who did not gain the right to vote until 1924, Asian Pacific Islander American women until 1952, and African American women and Latinas who were victims of voter suppression until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and 1975. And whereas the fact that today, record numbers of women are serving in local, state, and national government and running for office in unprecedented numbers as part of the legacy of these resolute American suffragettes. And whereas the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution has played an important role in advancing the rights of all women. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham honors the role of the ratification of the 19th Amendment in further promoting the core values of our democracy, as promised by the Constitution of the United States, reaffirming the opportunity for everyone to learn about and commemorate the efforts of the women's suffrage movement and the role of women in our democracy, and reaffirms our desire to continue to strengthen democratic participation and to inspire future generations to cherish and preserve the historic precedent established under the 19th Amendment. Be it further resolved that the Township Committee, the Township of Chatham, hereby recommends that residents and civic institutions celebrate August 18, 2020 as the 100th anniversary of the passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment, providing for women's suffrage, and August 26, 2020 as the date of its official certification.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Would you like to move that be adopted?
I would love to move for this to be adopted.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Very good.
I think you got 3 seconds.
I think
from the rest of the women on the Chatham Township Committee.
Can the minutes show three seconds there?
A second, a third, and a fourth.
A second, a third, and a fourth.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mrs. Spadacco,
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness,
Yes.
and Mayor Keller.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is reports. And I'm sure Tropical Storm Isaias in its impact on the township will be a major mention in those reports. But before we get to those individual reports, I want to thank all of our emergency workers, especially Police Chief Miller and his officers, and our Department of Public Works crews under Manager Rich Young for all their tireless work helping us recover from the storm. JCP&L has told us that Isaias was second only to Hurricane Sandy in the amount of damage it caused to their electrical equipment. That may be true, but many of us are less than happy with JCP&L's cleanup after the storm, both in terms of their performance and in their communication. I know that many of our residents share the same frustration, and I know that just about every town feels the same way, based on the complaints that every mayor was voicing to JCP&L during the daily conference calls last week. We have already communicated our unhappiness to the governor's office, to our Morris County freeholders, and repeatedly to JCP&L itself. We are documenting our specific concerns, and JCP&L has promised to discuss them with us. If any member of the public would like to add anything to our list, please email your concerns to us as soon as possible. And then we'll proceed to our reports. Stacy, would you like to go first?
Sure. I also wanted to thank Deputy Mayor Ness and Committeewoman Swartz. I was on vacation last week, but I was receiving emails from residents, and I followed up with JCP&L, but also with Deputy Mayor Ness and with Committeewoman Swartz, and they were very responsive and chasing down as much as they possibly could, despite not getting much help from JCP&L. So thank you for all your efforts. I know last week was pretty tough on everybody. We had our Board of Health meeting on Tuesday. The nurse specialist spent a lot of time talking about, actually the entire group talked a lot about COVID and where we are. The Board of Ed, that was a big topic of discussion. The Board of Ed did announce on Monday their plans for returning to school. And for the younger kids, it's more of a full-time schedule. For the older, it's more of a hybrid, but there's a lot of details, and I won't do any of it justice by trying to repeat it here. And it is posted on chatham-nj.org, the school district website. So if you want information on what the Board of Ed plans are for return to school, you can go there. We had talked previously about noise complaints from the commercial lawn blowers, and there will be a letter going out that's been approved by the Board of Health to go out with the tax bill to remind residents, you know, everybody's working from home, kids will be doing school from home, so to please be mindful of running equipment, and to also share with them the you know, the rules around that, so that they make sure, and also that they should pass it along to their landscapers so that they comply with the requirements, the noise ordinances. And then the third item, our Tri-Town Cares met this week, and we are having a panel discussion on August 25th at 7:30 p.m. And the topic is helping your child transition to their new school reality. That will be a Zoom discussion. And, you know, it'll talk about things like how to manage your stress and your child's stress, because we're both feeling that way, and how to handle schedules and flexibility and all the stress associated with kind of this crazy return to school. So there will be a sign up coming out shortly, and that's on Tuesday the 25th. I think those are my updates.
Stacy, can I ask you whether any mention was made about the concern that Dan Miller mentioned a couple of weeks ago regarding people on the highways and byways talking loudly and so on? I know it's been a sticky wicket for people who do live in those areas that are part of the swamp route, because folks are out so early and often disrupting. Were you able to pass along that concern?
It just briefly got brought up during the meeting, and there, you know, just generally was the sentiment that it's not something you can.
I know, right?
You know, it's.
Well, there is a sign there now.
Excuse me?
There's a sign out in Green Village now asking the bikers and the people to keep their voices down and obey the bike rules of the road.
Yeah.
So there's something right in front of the firehouse to remind people to be quiet.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, just discussing commercial leaf blowers and how hard it is to, you know, be able to monitor commercial leaf blowers, which you would think. I mean, even when we've had concerns about generators.
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. But a generator, you know, it's a limited period of time, and it generally is not, you know, hopefully it's further away from the property line that it's not bothering the neighbors. But those complaints have definitely come up, and they've had to take their equipment out and measure the noise. And there's been people who've had to move generators because there was too much consistent noise. But certainly things that are transient, like the leaf blowers, it's just hard, and bicyclists, it's just hard to be able to measure and then to be able to, you know, follow up on those concerns. So that, you know, other than the moving signage that came up. There was really no thought as to other things that could be done.
Right. So my question about the generators, it's a crazy experience walking through neighborhoods over the last, in the aftermath of the tropical storm, and just hearing so many. Some are really bad. Some are somewhat bad. In areas where homes are kind of close together, it seems like they're right outside your bedroom window. There are mechanisms in place for these sorts of complaints at the Board of Health, right?
Yes, yeah. So
Because they are noise, it's a noise ordinance. Had any people come to you lately, or do you expect? I mean, I'm kind of thinking that people will be coming to you on a case-by-case basis, I suppose. How do they get checked out? Any idea?
So we did have one that came up with the Board of Health officer. He more so gives his reporting, and there was something that came up. I guess they had just been testing it at the time, but the concern is it was so loud that it was causing vibrations in the neighbor's home. So, clearly far exceeding. And even though I guess it would run periodically for maintenance purposes, but the concern is, of course, then if you have 4 days running of the generator. So it was the Board of Health officer that has to go out and measure everything, and then, let the resident know if there's got to be changes. They would issue that, those requirements. So in that case, that the one case that I've been aware of from this past year, the resident had to move the generator.
Mm-hmm.
But if people have concerns that it's really a problem, they should reach out I guess through Greg, they could get to the Board of Health officer.
Yes, as board secretary, a lot of those calls would come to me. And in relation to the storm, I only got one call about generator noise. After Sandy, when I saw how many permits were being submitted for generators, I thought there was going to be, people complaining en masse, but only one person had just sort of a general concern about generator noise. And I don't mean to sound dismissive of the complaint, just, it wasn't seemingly as much of an issue as I thought it would be.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt Committeewoman Eagle's report, but just for the audience and also for the minutes, I'd like to report that FiOS and Zoom are both working fine now, and Comcast was working fine. So we're firing on all cylinders here. Okay. Committeewoman Ewald, you were finished with your report?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Committeewoman Fondaco, anything to report? You're muted.
Okay, I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. Committeewoman Schwartz?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we all have our things to say regarding JCP&L and the aftermath of the tropical storm that really hit into us. The stats, I know, Mike, you did go forward with them, but as of August 4th, in the immediate aftermath, the outage across the JCP&L service territory was 788,000 people, and certainly every community was impacted, especially with the damage to the substations, because those do send power out to all corners of every town. At one point in time, out of 4,400 residents, folks, we had as many as 3,500 odd outages. So really 75% of Chatham Township was without power. I know that we were trying to disseminate as much information to you as possible via a lot of different methodologies. I know, Mayor Kelly, you put some notices out on our website. There were some Facebook posts, some Twitter updates, and we are at the mercy of the utility company, who is, in a lot of respects, really challenged when it comes to getting up to the minute information out to us. And sometimes in their haste, they're putting out faulty information. So when we go into a after battle report, we're going to be talking about an awful lot of those things. From a public safety perspective, there is nothing township residents and to our volunteer fire departments, etc., than their safety. We did have an issue opening River Road so that our fire company down there had the opportunity to get out and preserve life and property should the need arise. That was one of our most important things. The pumping stations on River Road that transport sewage from our homes down there up to the Tanglewood facility were running on generator power. We were really very vocal in expressing our needs to have those up and running and off generator. Thank goodness that we do have sufficient power, but we would hate to experience a failure. The demand for a global time of restoration gives us, unfortunately, the ugly truth sometimes. So when it comes to a date where everybody saw August 11th and heads were northern New Jersey, unfortunately, they gave us a figure that it was a terrible date, August 11th, for goodness sakes, but a lot of different things from a communications perspective, from a reporting perspective. So we are going to use every bit of communication that we have now to hopefully enhance communication going forward. Along the same lines of our utilities, PSE&G has been sending out letters regarding sending some folks into the community regarding meter inspection. Many meters of our natural gas meters have been moved to the outside so that PSE&G does actually not have to come into your home to read your meter, but if there are ones in your home, they do want to inspect them. PSE&G will obviously be highly identifiable, both by their vehicles, by their identification badges, etc. At the end of the day, if you have any concern about anyone coming into your home, you are the final authority. So if you are concerned for COVID reasons, if you're concerned for safety reasons, if you're just concerned for any reason, please be advised that you are the final arbiter of what goes on in your home, and you do not have to grant entry for PSE&G to come in. Obviously, if you have a gas meter in your house, they do want to inspect it, but that's an equation that you yourselves can all balance. Certain parts of our community, particularly in the southern, in the northern end of Chatham Township, PSE&G has been doing a lot of work on gas main replacement under our roads. And some of our roads, as a result, have ended up in really dreadful condition, even where some of the service lines go onto folks' lawns. PSE&G has said they are going to restore property to any homeowner specifications. So if there are any concerns, feel free to let me know or anybody else. We will get in touch with PSE&G if you feel that they have in any way permanently damaged or damaged any of your lawns and shrubbery and things. As far as replacing and repairing the roads, we are going to be in ongoing discussion with getting the roads back to their original, if not much better condition. I have been on Longwood many times. It's kind of in my neighborhood, and Longwood is just in very poor condition. So we're going to try, and John Rushke and I have been talking about putting that maybe. We do have a paving ordinance in our materials tonight. The utility will come in and repair where they have worked. We in Chatham Township have oftentimes worked out a deal where we're able to do the repair work ourselves, do the repaving work up to township standards, which are probably higher than the average utility. So when it comes to repairing the gas main work, we're going to make sure that gets alacrity. As far as our senior center is concerned, they will be going on vacation as of 12 noon on Friday and closing down for 2 weeks to return in September. And hopefully by then we'll have a whole new set of protocols where we can have more groups together and more activities, and we will take it one step at a time. But we hope that our senior center folks enjoy and I know that we have expressed all of our thanks to the folks who are serving us both in public services and public safety. They actually in turn want to thank you, the residents, for your cordiality when it comes to dealing with our local law enforcement and our DPW workers. DPW guys have been through many of our streets. They are not done. They're going to try and get from Lafayette up to Fairmount by tomorrow, Friday. There are still some piles along the way. We know other towns' mayors have said, we're not doing it. You people are taking advantage of our good nature. Chatham Township residents are being great, and DPW, Richard Young, and all of the folks extend their thanks, whether you're greeting them with some waters or Gatorades or just a nice, hi, how you doing? Thank you so much for helping me. County roads, folks who live on county roads who are hoping to have their storm debris cleaned up. If the county doesn't get out here to do it, rest assured that our Department of Public Works will do it. We've always done it. We don't want our residents to be so grossly neglected when it comes to Morris County taking care of storm debris left on their lawns. So if we get through all of our local streets and the county has not taken care of our county roads, then DPW will be around to take care of them as well. So that is about all I have to report. It's been a busy week. We were away as well. Stacy, you were away. People, maybe we were thinking we were going to go away before hurricane season hit us in earnest. We were wrong. So for all my colleagues who have spent so much personal time trying to keep JCP&L's feet to the fire, thanks to all of you. Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Thanks, Stacy, for following up. And that's what I got.
Thanks, Committeewoman Swartz. As our utilities liaison, I know you spend a lot of time on it yourself. Deputy Mayor Ness?
Thank you. Yes, some of us were not on vacation, and some of us didn't have the luxury of being out there. And I want to give a huge thank you to both DPW, our administration, and in particular to our Chief of Police. Tom Miller, Chief Miller, and I spent from 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday until about 10 o'clock at night, going back and forth on roads so we'd be able to communicate out to residents. And thank you for all of your kind words and appreciation of getting that information out there. It wasn't easy to get street level detail, but once the crews started to come in and we were able to find out where they went, on what streets they were located, that was giving residents some of the information that they were, really looking for. And the chief was just terrific in terms of going there when River Road was saying that it was energized at 9 o'clock at night. There was a group of 10 houses that were not, and part of Cardinal Hill was not out, was still out, unfortunately affecting our clerk, Greg, who I told his power was back on, but it wasn't. And the chief was able to contact a foreman and get the foreman out there. Around 8 o'clock at night, they found out there was a fuse on River Road that was affecting it, not the power, but a fuse. They were also able to power up the other half of Cardinal Hill. So it's that type of close kind of working relationship that is extraordinarily valuable when you have a storm like this. Not only to be able to share information back and forth about outages that residents were reporting, but also to be able to report out to residents about what's going on out there. So thank you very much to the chief and to our DPW and all the officers who were on the ground, who were also going out and doing visual inspections when we were told the power was back on, or forestry hadn't gotten out there, or there was potentially another tree coming down. Those guys were all out there doing the visual inspections so that they could report back as well. So it was a tremendous effort. And thank you very much for that. Going forward on this issue with JCP&L, this is not new. We have had sunny day outages. We have had storm outages. We have had our PSE&G representative who has come in and spoken to the township last year. And we talked about at that point, or at least I talked about at that point, doing some sort of assessment of all our equipment in town. How old are our power poles? How old are our substations? Why can a squirrel bite into a line? Why can a bird fly into a substation and blow it up? And I think that there is certainly, having listened in on the conference calls, the 3 p.m. conference calls statewide, there is certainly enough momentum right now to move the needle on this. There are things that we can ask JCP&L to look at that are being used right now, smart poles that will automatically provide communication back into the JCP&L system without residents having to report that they've lost power, because that was one of the ongoing problems that we had too. Residents would report that they were out of power, a portion of their street would get back power, they'd be told that they had power, and they had to re-enter their information into the system in order for them to be recognized as not having power. There are smart meters that do the same thing. When the smart meter detects that there's no power coming into the home, it reports directly back to their system without the resident having to take care of that and report or re-report or do things like that. So there are things that exist now in the JCP's kind of toolbox that can be implemented in towns across New Jersey, certainly hopefully at Chatham Township. And those are the kind of things that we'll be looking at in addressing, kind of doing a larger global debrief with our representatives, hopefully next week, as we move forward looking at our own processes here in the township. And I'm hoping again to join with other towns and other elected officials to move the needle forward on this. I certainly think it's time to do so. I also wanted to commend the cleanup crew that's been here in the kind of continuing on the weather vein. I wanted to thank the cleanup crews that have been here, Bob and Greg and all of the staff here who had to endure sheets and plastic all over everywhere and all throughout the building where the leaks occurred. I'm looking up right now because probably for the first time in about 15 years, the stains in the ceiling are gone, which is directly in front of me. You can't see it. But as many of you know, I used to write for the paper and there used to be a bucket there. And that's going back to somewhere in the early 2000s. So it is lovely to see the repair and the restore that they have done. There's a lot left to go, but thank you very much for that effort. It's not fun to live through this. I'd also like to thank our police officers once again, in particular Scott Herchek and Chief Miller, for continuing the dialogue on race and policing. They met with a borough resident, Zandy Sutton, and her son, and I'm very appreciative of them being willing to continue the conversation and reach out to any member of the community who wants to come in and sit down, talk to them, say hello, and voice whatever concerns or just get to know our police officers. So thank you very much for doing that. For joint recreation, we have not met. We are meeting next week, but we are discussing as plans are continuing to change, whether what's going to happen with the school system or what's going to happen in particular with sports. There has been a suggestion that the recreation follow the Chatham High School and the NJSIAA guidelines for return to fall sports, which would start on the weekend of September 14th. The school district will not be making their fields available until that time. And the overriding caution that we're discussing now at the recreation level is to not group together kids who have not been together for fall sports prior to the in-person starting of school out of an abundance of caution, and to match with the NJSIAA guidelines. So that will be a discussion that's starting tomorrow, and we'll continue with our joint rec next week. And I have some preliminary colony pool numbers. We were a bit hampered by the power outage and the storm that we had today, but So far for 2020, we have 404 memberships. In 2019, we had 394 memberships. And in 2018, we had 363 memberships. We instituted an August membership program, which hadn't been done in several years. And it was a reduced membership for the month of August. And we had 34 families sign up, which added an additional $2,000 in revenue. The overall revenue is reflective of the shortened season, the lower rates, and so we are at about, I'm going to have to refer to my other sheet. We are at approximately $96,000 in revenue for this year. Again, that's reflective of the shortened season, the lowered rates, and at 404 memberships, 96,000, and in 2019 we were at 394 at $131,000 in revenue. So we are taking a hit in terms of revenue with the shortened season and the reduced rates. But the good news is that we moved the needle a little bit in membership. So hopefully those members will come back next year when we open up with our regular rate schedule. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ness. Greg, do you have anything to report?
Would you allow me to interrupt? I apologize.
Sorry, I should have asked for questions.
We received a lot of questions regarding loss of food because in spite of how many people have noisy generators, a lot of people actually had to throw out a lot of food, me being one of them. JCP&L has determined that they are not responsible. That is a decision from the Board of Public Utilities. So unfortunately, the folks who lost a freezer full of food or a refrigerator full of food are not going to have any sort of recourse with JCP&L themselves. Homeowners policies often cover it. If you have a deductible that is manageable, oftentimes you can be reimbursed for your lost food through your homeowners policy, and I apologize.
Now, other utilities are doing this, and it's been alluded to. I know former Mayor Ritter mentioned to me that this was done in the past by JCP&L. I was not aware of this, but is there a reason why they're giving why they're not moving ahead as other utilities are? And I guess
it's a Board of Public Utilities rule. Actually, they are the ones who made the determination. I can explore it further, but right now I am being told by JCP&L that the BPU has determined that utilities are not responsible for food damages related to the storm.
I think Bob has something to add to that.
Go ahead.
Perhaps we could check into that. The PSE&G in their service area, they are reimbursing for food loss up to they have a maximum dollar amount. I believe it's $235. But there's a claim form that you fill out for PSE&G service area. And then they process it. But perhaps we can talk to the Board of Public Utilities about that. But I do know that the
Is your mic on?
the mic wasn't working before. All right. So perhaps we can explore with JCP&L or directly with the BPU about that. It's just because it is occurring in the PSE&G service area.
Okay, well, we'll pursue that and see what happens.
I can communicate directly with Committeewoman Schwartz on that. So that can be followed up.
Okay, thank you very much. Greg, anything to report?
Well, yes, actually, the recent comments fit in well to what I wanted to mention. We get a lot of calls from residents voicing concerns about power outages and all the problems with JCP in particular. And I know that the elected officials do a lot to advocate on behalf of the residents, and I thank you all for that. And I also wanted to remind residents that we've mentioned the Board of Public Utilities, and we as citizens and as residents also have the ability to go on their website and file complaints about utility companies. I did that myself last week. Once I saw on August 11th restoration expectation, I sent some kind words to the BPU voicing my dismay at how long it was going to take for that, which luckily power came back Saturday. but I just would like to remind residents that as much as the Township Committee advocates on our behalf, the Board of Public Utilities is the regulatory authority over the utilities, and they're the board that has the most sway over the utility companies. So the more of us regular residents that voice a concern to the BPU, hopefully they'll get on the stick and get JCP&L up to muster. And Deputy Mayor Ness mentioned Cardinal Hill in particular, how half of the complex was up and half was still off. Unfortunately, I was in the part that was out. But that illustrates the importance of residents calling in to let JCP&L know when they have an outage. And one of the services they offer when you report an outage is that they'll call you back to let you know that they think power is restored. I recommend that people take advantage of that opportunity, so that way, if you're like me and your power was still out, that way you can let them know that they still have to come back and fix it. Luckily, I was able to be in touch with Deputy Mayor Ness, who's in turn in touch with the chief and foreman to get it back up. But two-way communication is helpful. It's, as much as we want JCP&L to give us realistic expectations, it's good for us to be feeding information to them as well. And that was all I had that I wanted to report on.
Thank you, Greg.
I just want to let you know I had lost sound, so I didn't hear anything Greg said. So if I needed to know anything, Greg, if you could touch base with me later.
Basically, I said report complaints to the BPU about power companies.
Okay. I had to sign off and re-sign in. I don't know what happened. I couldn't hear anything.
Okay, we hear you now fine. I hope you can hear us. Okay.
Yes.
Most people like it when they can't hear me.
John, anything to report from engineering?
Yes, Mayor. The committee will see that on the consent agenda, there is a resolution to award a contract to Sofano Construction under the Morris County Co-op cooperative program. That's a co-op for paving, and we utilize that program a lot because it does represent a significant cost savings versus us having to go out to bid ourselves. And the resolution does list the roads that are proposed to be paved for 2020. I'll just read them off quickly. It's Hilltop Terrace, Highland Avenue, Hall Road, Cobblestone Court, Rose Terrace, Edgewood Road, Fairfax Terrace, Jeffrey Court, Tanglewood Lane, and Roosevelt Road. And those roads were selected based on an assessment that was done through the entire township, and the roads were ranked regarding the conditions of the roads, and these roads were on the top of the list regarding the need for paving. There were other roads that were not selected, such as Long Hill, because we have the PSC&G doing work there,
And Longwood, John?
Yes, Longwood, others. So there's roads that were not added on the list because of utility work going on. And we typically, as part of our road opening permits, we require the paving to wait a minimum of 6 months to allow the utility trenches to settle before we pave. So those roads would be targeted. And as Councilwoman Shorts indicated, is that we're going to be working closely with PSC&G regarding the roads that they recently did regarding, because there was a substantial amount of damage that occurred on those roads, not just in the vicinity of the trenches, but beyond that. So we're going to work with them and try and get some coordinated efforts with them. So we do have the contractor does have a short window of availability. That's next Thursday and Friday. We're gonna try and get some paving done those 2 days. We get to coordinate with the DPW. They have to go in first and prep the roads. They repair basins. They do repair curb. They do certain road improvements before we pave. So we're going to be working closely with Rich Young to get some of the roads prepped. But he only has a short window, and but it does have a full schedule. So the majority of the paving will likely occur mid to late September. That's just, we're working with his schedule. Hopefully sooner if he gets work done, but that's the tentative schedule at the moment. So that's what I have to report on the paving. We also got an announcement from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. They announced that they are receiving grant applications for the Transportation Alternatives Program. That's a an identical program to the Safe Routes to School program. It's a federal program. It does represent a pool of money that's much larger than our municipal aid grants. You know, typically with municipal aid, we're asking in the range of $150,000, but with a TAP grant, you can ask in upwards of $1 million, and that's not, you know, entirely unreasonable. But you know, there's a lot of grants, you know, that are awarded between the $500 and $1 million range. We have not received any TAP grants yet in the township. We got a number of outstanding Safe Routes to Schools, but I have represent other municipalities where we did receive TAP grants, and some of the. And we have submitted applications in the past. The last application, they cycle every 2 years. And 2 years ago, we submitted an application for the replacement of sidewalk on Fairmont, that asphalt path that goes through. And we were proposing to have that as a, you know, upgrade that to, you know, current standards. But there's another projects, you know, I'm just mentioning it now so that the committee can start thinking about where they might want to consider, you know, submitting an application. You know, other consideration was on Southern Boulevard, on Snake Hill, you know, putting a sidewalk basically from the Fairmont Southern intersection down to Heritage, down to the apartments, so that, you know, kind of connect the apartments with the townhouses with the center of town. Other considerations, because this is a unique that it also could apply to trails, and so we actually looked at connecting the Green Village Post Office in Nash Field, going through basically a wooded path, having platforms and going through that to connect, you know, the Southern Boulevard with the county park. And so that was another project that was kicked around, you know, a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of consideration. TAP grants are used a lot for streetscape projects. You know, we don't necessarily have the venue of you know, putting in streetlights in our you know, the smaller business area that we have, but that's common. Sidewalks, streetscape projects, trail projects. So it's a unique grant program, and it's something that, you know, certainly, I know there is certainly a lot of frustration regarding the Safe Routes to Schools and how long they take, but nevertheless, if we can capture some of this federal money, it's certainly something that's worthwhile to look for.
John, can I ask you, didn't we apply for a grant or two regarding Heritage Green or Chatham Glen up Snake Hill?
Yeah, that's
Cross River Road, and we were turned down. What is
no, you know, we
grant application?
yeah, that was one of the I mentioned from Heritage Green to
Right.
You know, Snake Hill. That was another application we submitted. You know, it's a very competitive program. They out of all the municipalities, they only award 10 grants in that range. So it's a federal program, so it's national wide that we're going all the money that's trying to you know, obtain from this program. So it's usually there's about, I think last year there was about 10. 2 years ago there's about 10 projects that got awarded.
So having been turned down for this particular sidewalk project by a different entity doesn't impact the viability of a new grant application to a different entity?
You know, it's just a very competitive program. You know, the last round, of those 10 grants, and it was 10 or plus. You know, I received 2 of them for Hopatcon and Denville. So it's a program that, and it seems to be very successful with streetscape projects, you know, and sidewalks. So, you know, we'll just put our best foot forward on an application, and certainly it doesn't take a significant effort to put a grant application together. So we'll just see. We certainly want to do something that's you know, desirable to the committee, not necessarily that you know, something that may have a better rating, but it's not something we have an interest in doing. So.
Shocker.
And I think it's just important to start thinking about this, because you know our policy that we've changed from the past is that if we're going to propose a sidewalk project, we do get the residents involved in the very beginning before we submit the grant application, and not surprise them afterwards. So you know that's so we do want to perhaps start talking about this, next meeting in September, just to start getting that feel so we can give residents plenty of, if we're going to go, impact the residents, we'd let them know that we're going to be applying for it.
I just wanted to ask a question. The sidewalks along Snake Hill and going up and connecting the condos up into Fairmount, that was a project that was submitted as a grant.
Yes.
It was declined.
Yes.
So wasn't that same idea as part of the Dixie-Dale negotiation?
Yeah, no, actually no, it's separate. It wasn't part of Dixie-Dale. This is completely different. This would be going from basically the schoolhouse going down Southern Boulevard and then crossing near Hillside and then connecting into that sidewalk. So that this route was not considered. It was not. Yeah, it was not. And the last time we submitted that grant application, I don't believe it was a TAP program. I think it was a different program that came out about 4 years ago, and it was a unique program. It wasn't a federal. It was a spinoff from the municipal aid program. So that's what we submitted on that. So I don't believe we submitted that under the TAP. I'd have to go back and look.
All right, I was just going to say it would be kind of ironic if we just submitted it for a grant and then we tried to get it as part of our Dixie-Dale negotiations, but it got voted down.
The section of that, this was not part. This was never discussed with Dixie-Dale. The Dixie-Dale was really focusing on the sidewalks in the immediate vicinity of that development, not off-site, because there's substantial distance between where we were installing this versus Dixie-Dale.
Thank you.
And just lastly, we did receive a grant from Morris County to construct a trail on the township property on Hillside. It's the lot opposite side of Dixie-Dale. I recently had a similar project in Denville, and we went out to bid, and the bids came in quite higher than what we anticipated. And speaking to the contractors, don't print, please. Okay, thanks. My daughter. And getting feedback from the contractors is that we basically put together plans and specifications, but we were showing a path in the middle of the woods, and it was really hard for the contractors to really appreciate the level of work that was associated with what we were anticipating. And so with any construction contract, when the contractor has risk associated regarding what he has to do, that always increases the cost. So, the one thing that I spoke to Bob about is that the Morris County grant is not a 100% grant. We do have a contribution towards it. And what I'd like to do is retain a local excavator to just go in and just create a really rough path, like clear the area so that, so that, clear some of the trees that were falling, clear some of the light brush, just so that when contractors go to bid the job, they can actually walk the approximate location of where the path is so they can get a better appreciation of what the level of effort that's involved. And I think we're going to get much better pricing doing it this way versus what I did previously in Denville, just because I want to give the contractors more insight regarding the scope, because it's kind of unknown. So I'm going to be working with Bob to hire that. I anticipate the cost is probably going to be in the range of about $12,000. It's going to be about 3 days worth of work for the contractor to go in and just clear the path. But so that's kind of where we are on that program. So I think that is going to, we're going to spend a little money up front, but I think we'll pay less at the end because we're going to just help define the contract better.
Can you tell me where that exactly is again, this trail?
It's the property that across from Dixie-Dale. It borders on Southern Boulevard, all the properties behind Fairmount, and it borders on Hillside. So it's a larger lot, and it's generally a loop around that property. So there's also a trail that was started. It's a real fraction of the entire path, but it's a portion of it, and we are utilizing some of that path as part of this, and we're kind of branching off of it. And the way during Sandy that that property was just, devastated by all the trees that fell down. And it's actually very difficult to even walk in there. So that's why I think contractors are just going to be, they're just going to bid this very high because they're going to be just turned off by not having proper access. And I just thinking, that's why I wanted to go in there with an excavator and just kind of clear a path. This is not going to be something that someone's going to walk on, just enough to get, have the excavator go around and clear the area so that they can just kind of get in there.
And this was the trail that was supposed to connect to the trail that was going to be on Dixie Dale.
This was a trail that this was a trail in the woods versus the trail on Dixie Dale was along the roadway. So this could tie into that, correct? Yep.
The history of this one goes back several years ago. The Open Space Committee had put down a wood chip several years ago to create something of a walking trail.
I remember that because we were talking about it in conjunction with Dixie Dale, that it could provide the public access walking trails that were proposed by the developer on Dixie Dale would have connected up into that trail. So I just.
Correct. Yeah.
On that.
I seem to remember at one point, it was probably right after we bought the property, not long after Hurricane Sandy, I think Public Works had looked at it just to see if it was feasible for them to do the work, but it was just, more than we had the manpower for.
Yeah, that's a mess. That whole area is a mess.
Yeah, they need a different type of equipment to get in there. Just to follow up on what John said, the investment in the beginning of this project will probably save us over $25,000 at the end of the project and get us better bids. So.
Well, is there any chance, John, that will come back on the table with Dixie Dale wanting to provide, who had offered those walking trails? Might that come back on the table once the wetlands assessments are considered?
The only way that there's a condition of approval that they have to create the walking path along River Road. So if they cannot comply with the board resolution, I would send them back to the board to waive that condition, and that would open the door. But other than that, other than them having to go back to the board to waive an existing condition, it's difficult to open the door with that.
So the public access trails that were presented will never come back.
Yeah, well, the hearing is over. The planning board hearing is over. During the planning board, that was the time to address these issues, and the planning board did deliberate on this, deliberate on the path, and ultimately they came back with the recommendation of having the path along the roadways versus the interior.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, John. Albert, anything to report from the legal side?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything to report, but I would like an opportunity to address the Township Committee before the public hearing on Ordinance 2011, the introduction of the two ordinances, and then the final resolution on the agenda regarding waiving subdivision fee. So if you would call upon me at that point, I will address those issues. I do have one question for John, and that is this path that you are intending to clear by the excavator. That is on municipally owned property. That is not on any private property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Bob, anything to report?
Just a short report, Mr. Mayor. Follow up on the 2020 road program. This was one of the first years that we used both physical inspection and then we used electronic means to inspect the roads. So we had a device that went through and looked at the roads, basically looking at it. I will use the term infrared, looking below the surface so that we can see, to be able to rank the roads with more than just the eye. So I'm satisfied with the road rankings. I look forward to using both the physical inspection and this in the future. We won't use it every year, but it's a good way to make sure we have a good benchmark. And then the final portion of my report just has to do with there was an abbreviated summer baseball and softball program that ended over the weekend. It was something that had been talked about with our sister community, the borough, and the joint recreation program of the Chathams. It was travel baseball, it was softball. The protocols were followed. The teams were able to complete a short season. They were able to enjoy themselves. And from my perspective, the best part of this was that nobody got sick. There might have been a couple of injuries, but the protocols were followed, and they were able to have a good season. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Bob. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is the hearing of citizens and petitions. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. And just to repeat, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. You can do that if you're watching on cable TV. You can do that by dialing *9. And if you're on Zoom, you can follow the instructions on Zoom to raise your hand. When you raise your hand and are recognized, please start by identifying yourself by name and address for the record. All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. And rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will wait until each speaker is finished and before responding. And we will now ask you to raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
Mayor, I forget we may have mentioned this, only one more chance to speak per public.
That's correct. Thank you.
We do not at this time have anyone with their hand raised. If anyone's participating, but okay, we have someone. I'm bringing in Nicole Hegner. And Nicole, if you want to unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you, Greg. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you.
I have that technical difficulty where it sounded really slow. Check your...
Am I okay now? I don't know why. Is it okay?
No, it sounds like you're talking at about 3 miles less an hour. Very, very slow.
If you want to try again, Nicole.
Why this does this?
No.
That sounds better, Nicole.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, great.
Okay, yeah, it's so funny. It never happens at work, but it only happens when I call you guys. I don't know what it is, so I apologize. Is this on the introduction? Because I'm not sure if can I just ask some general questions now? Is this the opportunity?
Dick Dole, just for the record, if you would, name and address, please, first.
Okay, Nicole Hagner, 396 River Road.
Thank you.
Okay. So I had 3 questions. The first one was about, I guess I was trying to follow, will we also see some concept plans for the group homes that are proposed on the River Road lot? And what would be the timing of that, was my first question. My second question was, I think, Tracy, you had mentioned that you guys during the storm had posted like street level information. I guess I was just curious where that was being posted, because I'm not sure if I was also seeing that and maybe others had the same. I'm not sure where that was posted because I didn't see it on the Chatham Township website. So that was my second question. And my third question on the trails, I guess, is more for John Rushke. Would it be maybe a better option to consider getting an assessment of putting the trail on hillside in this spring, like in March after the snow falls and all of the heavy growth is down, to really have a better assessment of the cost and even the timing of when to do that? I mean, clearly right now is probably the worst possible time to try to go into those types of areas with so much brush growth and, you know, prickers and other things on that site. So it seems like it would be prudent to do it at a more appropriate time to get a better cost assessment and even for the work to be done. So those are my 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Want to take number 1?
Yes, let's do them in order. Will the public be seeing concept plans for group homes proposed for River Road. And Bob, I'm understanding that we'll be proceeding the same way we did with the original group homes, that we would be, as we move forward, we would be having conceptual plans and an artist rendering and be able to present those to the public when they're available.
That's correct. That's a few months down the road, but that is correct. Maybe a little more than a few months, but yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of posting, the postings went up on the Chatham Township Facebook page as well as the community forum. They went up usually in the afternoon and then sometimes in the evening as well as conditions warranted. And I don't know if we've got to post them to the website as well. I think I just posted them to the Facebook page and then shared the Facebook page to the community forum.
And then just what was the best we could do in terms of getting information from JCP&L? When we say street level information, was it individual street addresses? Was it just the blocks, the block of streets?
Going back and forth over the tickets that were in, calls in from residents who said they didn't have power, but were saying that they had power, where the crews were. It was all of that information that the chief was getting from crews and the foremen of the crews as to where they were in town, where they were heading next in town, so that people could get the information of, okay, I'm next on the line. They're on Pine and then they're going to Warwick. They're on Buxton and then they're going to Manhattan. And so that was just a tremendous help with the chief being in contact with the crews and with the foreman and being able to provide that level of information.
Thank you very much. And then the third topic, John, if you would, trails. Do you see any benefit in kind of staging this for the spring as opposed to sooner? Or is this going to be the spring regardless at this point?
Yeah, it's probably going to, the bid, I would anticipate that we're going to be going out to bid in the fall. And by time we award a contract, it's going to be fall, winter, and the leaves will be down. And I think that that's what we're prepping for is to go for that time frame. You know, what we have when you walk that site, the biggest issue is all the trees that are down and that you can't physically walk in the area. So it's not a matter of having the leaves on the trees. It's a matter of all the debris that's on the ground that we can't get at, and I know that tree is dead. It's just so I think we're not, we're sensitive of that the best construction time to build a path is in the fall, winter, when all the vegetation is down. But the work that we're prepping now is to get the bid documents ready for going out.
And I know from walking that hillside myself that there's that multifloral rose is a big issue in some patches as well.
Yeah,
which kind of becomes pretty thick. But okay, so it's going to basically back into the spring anyway by the time we do the necessary steps.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just interject and perhaps ask Tracy a question regarding posting of which streets are out and doing it on Facebook as opposed to the website. Or I know it seems like with the amount of people who show up on Facebook, sometimes it seems like everybody in our community is involved somehow. And yet the number of people that you talk to who say, I don't have a Facebook presence, is sometimes surprising to me. But did we post them on the website, the names of the streets, or is that something anybody asked about?
No one's asked about it yet. We haven't posted they were kind of coming thick and fast along the way. But I can certainly look to posting it up on the Facebook. We're covering about 7,000 people between the community forum and the township Facebook page. We don't have a township Twitter, but we can look to, in the next storm or in the next whatever event we have, try and get those up on a more timely manner. I mean, as you know, we have to send that information to city images.
Some of us think that Facebook is the universal method of communicating, but it actually, there are a lot of people who don't look to it for their sources of information. So, Greg?
I think the website even less so, but your point is well taken that we can try and get them up. The problem is that we have to go to city images,
Yes,
and then they post it when they can, and then at that point it may be not accurate any longer.
Once we get the website in-house, which should be soon, then getting it posted on the website will be a much more practical solution. In the interim, Facebook is, in my opinion, one of the quickest ways to reach a widespread audience. And as I became aware of updates, my apartment complex has a community page. I was posting updates there, and I'm sure other people were doing similar things with their
In their community groups.
groups.
We also send everything to TAP as well.
Right, and through Alert Chatham Township, we also have the ability to get notified when changes are made to the website. So it's probably, might as well use it if we have it, is my comment.
It just was a matter of timing. Those things don't go up in a very timely fashion. So.
Part of the struggle is trying to get reliable information from JCP&L. One of my personal frustrations with this one was when you look at it online, it would tell you Tuesday night at 11 p.m.
I know.
And at the same time that the map showed that on JCP&L's website, I was getting text messages from neighbors, friends, that JCP&L was actively working on River Road, which obviously I got power back Saturday night, but it just, it's frustrating when it's so hard to get reliable information from JCP&L. And something that I think we learned during Sandy was that, although we try to get good information out, sometimes there's blowback. If we get out information that turns out to not be true, then it makes us look.
Oh, for sure.
But it's a good point actually that you brought up, and Greg, that actually in our office, and people working in our office and working with Bob and with the communications committee, we are bringing the website finally in-house. It has been a long ask since we started this project in 2019. We wanted the free site to get up and running, and that was kind of fraught with issues that came up. And then with the hire of Ashley, who has managed with websites internally, we've done our first look at it about 2 weeks ago, and it looks terrific. And it's been an ongoing effort now to update all of the information on there. It will be a much better tool that we can update ourselves without having to send it out to a separate agency and rely on them to put it up whenever they have the time to put it up in their queue. So we will be able to get information up on the website immediately. And we're also saving money. So that's going to be a very nice kind of a trifecta. Instant information, better usability of the website, and costing us less money. So we're looking for that to come online sometime at the end of September.
Thank you for mentioning that, Tracy. That's a big plus.
Big project.
Very good. Anyone else with their hands up, Greg?
No other hands up at this time. I would just mention we do have a phone call with the listener. If they have any interest in asking a question, maybe making a comment, pressing *9 is the way to raise your hand if you're interested. And we'll see if they are. Okay, number ending in 1876, you are now active. If you would like to unmute and speak and give your name and address.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. It's Fran Leff from 12 Joseph Street. So just to tag on a comment first on what Nicole mentioned and then Karen brought into the mix as well. It might be prudent to do a survey of how communication needs to come to the households in the township, because even though people might be on Facebook, it doesn't mean they're active at all. So, in the case of last week, and certainly in emergencies, more is better than less. And I know the borough does a pretty good job of communication, and a lot of us were tagging off of the borough site to try to find out what was going on, as well as our neighborhood towns, Madison and Florham Park. So you just might want to try to see what others are doing that's working. And then I have a question regarding the paving, and so probably more for John. I've sent numerous pictures of Lake Road and what happens, especially after rain and after snow, of the Lake Road paving that happened at midnight. I think it was about 7 years ago now. So it was done at midnight. And I've been complaining ever since. I'm more concerned from how dangerous it is for children, cars, and ultimately someone getting very seriously hurt or worse. on what's going on Lake Road. We know we have the drainage issues, and that is identified, and I think no one would say that there isn't any. And it absolutely drains into Lake Road, onto my Lake Road driveway, onto Dot Morehouse's driveway, and as well down the street. So how do we get Lake Road on the list for paving is my question. I think it's critical. I don't know the state of the other roads that you mentioned, but certainly from the amount of times I've complained, and kudos to the township who's come out and tried to take some of the ice away when it happens, especially during snowstorms, but that's not a fix for how bad the road is between Joseph and Lake Road. Thank you.
John, do we have any updated information on that?
Two issues. One is that we do have a drainage system that runs behind the homes on Joseph Street and Emmett Street, and it is a drainage system. It does pick up a lot of the drainage off of Shunpike and actually part of Madison, and during severe weather, it is grossly undersized, and we do have a drainage issue there. That's something that we have looked at over the years. It's a very substantial project to upgrade all that drainage, not only in our section, but also coordinating with the county. So, looking at, with the drainage system we have, we do periodically inspect it. We videoed it. We make sure the pipe is clear and it's going, but system is generally undersized. So that's a separate discussion in itself regarding the drainage system. And it is a significant project to undertake. The issue regarding Lake Road and Joseph Street, frankly, I thought that was addressed years ago, 5-7 years ago. So I could bring that up with Rich Young and take a look at that and that intersection. We did have some ponding that was occurring in there, and I'll speak to Rich again and see how it was done. I thought the DPW addressed that. Regarding the remaining paving of the entire neighborhood, that was paved, like you said, about 7 years ago. I think the roads ranked very high when we did our rating system, so we wouldn't anticipate paving this neighborhood, in the near future. I have to speak to Rich Young if we've done some crack sealing in this area. It's probably around the time frame we should be looking at doing some crack sealing in this area. But regarding that specific intersection, Joseph and Lake, I will talk to Rich Young again, and we'll look at that. I thought it was addressed.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, John.
John, Mayor Kelly reported to us a couple of days ago about Madison's intent to build further housing right across from these homes on Joseph and Emmett and so on. Perhaps some high density housing with affordable housing component where the church is going up Green Ave. I think it's Green Avenue, and where there are already condos. So I think that if we're talking about a drainage matter now, figuring out how far down the road Madison may actually be building some more high density housing there might be something you got to keep on your radar going forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, Madison does not have, as stringent stormwater controls that we have in the town.
No, they don't, and it all comes our way right from there. I'm sure Miss.
Really, if the project is not defined as a major project under the stormwater controls, there may not be very significant controls that are going to be imposed, but we can look into that and see. Yeah. I'll talk to the arranger.
Keep it on your radar for the years ahead, because if Mike's report was something that's going to be imminent from Madison, could be a concern.
Well, like I said, we already have a drainage system that's grossly undersized, and,
right.
and it's just exasperated by putting more water into it, and we'll take a look at that.
And just to clarify, Madison has its affordable housing plans moving forward as well. They are doing zoning overlays in 7 different areas around town, one of which involves the Life Fellowship Church across on their side of Shunpike. So a zoning overlay does not represent any kind of plans to immediately construct anything. A zoning overlay adds an option to the property owner where if and when a future property owner or present property owner wishes to develop their property or sell it, then they would have an option for, in this case, some townhouses. But that's, you know, I didn't want somebody to think that there was a plan for those that has any kind of meat on the bones. This is a zoning overlay that is in a proposed plan. It's not even adopted yet, but just to clarify that. Greg, anyone else with their hands up?
Well, no further hands up, but just wanted a quick comment on the communications aspects. I think Mrs. Leff made a good point about potentially doing a survey to assess needs, but I also wanted to quick point out, just on a practical level, that the township does employ various communications means. We have the website, we have the Facebook page, we have the app now alerts, we have the TV channel. But during something like a hurricane with a widespread power outage, when cable lines, phone lines, internet is all down along with power, it does become problematic trying to reach residents, both on our end. If we don't have power, we can't get messages sent out. And if residents don't have power, it may be harder for them to receive it. So it's, you know, something like a hurricane response, there are inherent limitations on the effectiveness of trying to get word out, but we do the best that we can. But if there are other means that we can employ, it's probably worth becoming aware of whatever other options may be out there.
Very good. Will do, Greg. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have anyone else with their hands up at this point, or are we?
No.
Okay, then we will close that first public hearing. There will be another one later in the agenda. And our next item on the agenda is a public hearing and final adoption of ordinances 2020-13. And I would like to ask Albert if he'd give us a quick description of what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall that about a month ago, you adopted ordinance 2020-11, which was a rezoning of the Hillside Avenue property. When that ordinance was reviewed, it was determined that further clarification was needed with respect to the grading and the leveling, the clearing and leveling of the group home lot that is a part of that subdivision. So this ordinance is an amendment to the prior ordinance to clarify the responsibility of the developer with respect to clearing and leveling the group home lot. This ordinance was introduced by the Township Committee as an amendment, referred to the Planning Board for review to determine whether or not it is inconsistent with the master plan. As the Planning Board found with respect to the original ordinance, this ordinance, the Planning Board found was also inconsistent with the master plan, but recommended its adoption by the Township Committee because it promotes affordable housing. That is the status of the Planning Board report. On tonight's agenda, you have the public hearing on the ordinance. If the Township decides to proceed forward procedurally, you would move the resolution first and then move the ordinance. The resolution is what is referred to as a reasons resolution because the Planning Board found that the ordinance was inconsistent with the master plan. The Township has to adopt a resolution stating its reasons for overriding the Planning Board, and those reasons are set forth in the plan in that resolution before you. So procedurally, you would do that first, and then you would do the ordinance.
Thank you, Albert. So, Greg, if you would read the title of the reasons resolution, we'll take that one first.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was not clear. You're going to have the public hearing first. You need to have the public hearing.
Oh, okay, very good.
Once you have the public hearing, then you proceed with those two items.
Very good. Okay. We'll now open up to public hearing, ordinance 2020-13.
Same process as before. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice.
Okay, very good. We'll close the public hearing and move on to the vote.
Resolution 179.
Please, resolution first.
Okay, the title of the resolution, 2020-179, a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, stating the reasons for enacting ordinance 2020-13. We'll need a motion in a second.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? As one of our representatives on the planning board, just a quick thumbnail summary. This is somewhat overlapping what Albert described, but the reasons resolution basically says that that this subdivision along Hillside Avenue, while it does not, while it is inconsistent with our land use plan, the planning board does recommend that we do take this action because it advances two primary goals of our master plan. One is the deliverance of affordable housing because it will provide a site for one group home, and the other one is that it will advance the goal of protecting the steep slopes between Hillside Avenue and Fairmount Avenue because it calls for a conservation easement on all the slopes there that are greater than 20%, and it also reduces the front yard setback from 50 feet to 30 feet so that the houses will not intrude by that much further into the steep slopes where they start to go up at that greater percentage. Greg, can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
No.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. And our next item then will be the ordinance that goes with this resolution. Greg, could you read the title to this ordinance, please?
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 2020-11, creating a new R3 Affordable Housing Residence District, R3AH, by clarifying that the group home lot will be cleared and leveled to allow for the construction of a group home on the lot.
Thank you, Greg. Can I have a motion to introduce? I'm sorry, we've already, this will be a motion to adopt.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I don't mind saying that I will be voting against this as I voted against the other zoning matters on this particular stretch of township land. I have been against the 5 lots there since the beginning of time. We established at the planning board in 2019 that 4 lots was too many. We thought 3 lots was great, and here we are with 5. And notwithstanding my affection for group homes, my belief in group homes, and my dedication to the developmentally disabled, which I believe is a very noble endeavor, particularly for municipalities. I just am not in favor of this. I'm not in favor of the 5 lots or the previous resolution, so I will be voting no.
Very good. Any other discussions?
I think for me, the material changes and the protection for all of the steep slopes that was not present in 2019, as well as the addition of the group home, which furthers our desire to provide housing for a special needs population. I think those 2 things, in addition to offsetting or changing the setback, which also was not included in 2019, so it doesn't encroach further into the steep slopes, makes this something that is much more tenable, and we get a great deal more out of it in what was proposed in 2020. So I'll be voting yes.
Anyone else? Very good. Greg, we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
No.
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. We're moving on to the introduction of two ordinances relating to affordable housing. And I'd like to ask Albert if you could give a brief synopsis of these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are companion ordinances. The first ordinance is a bond ordinance, which appropriates the necessary funds for the acquisition of 522 Southern Boulevard. The ordinance explains the total amount of the ordinance. It explains the amount that is being reserved for a bond ordinance, which will actually be a debt incurred by the town. It explains how much is being taken from the capital budget of the municipality or the capital reserve, and the amount that is being used from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So this is both a bond ordinance that appropriates and authorizes the acquisition, and the acquisition can be by either purchase, a voluntary purchase, or a condemnation. That is the bond ordinance. The condemnation ordinance is a companion ordinance, and it authorizes the township to make an offer to the property owner, negotiate in good faith with the property owner to determine whether or not the property can be purchased voluntarily. And if that fails, it authorizes the township to proceed with condemnation. It also has a history of how the township committee and the planning board arrived at this point. And in section 8, there is a recital of various documents that the township committee has adopted over a period ranging from the most recently the housing element and fair share plan and the July 23, 2020 amended settlement agreement. Those documents are all incorporated by reference in this ordinance, and you take notice of those documents as you're considering this. At the next township committee meeting, the township planner, Frank Banish, will go into greater detail of this ordinance. But it is as a companion to the bond ordinance, and the two authorize the town to acquire 522 Southern Boulevard by either a voluntary purchase or condemnation.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Also, Resolution 2020-185 is related to this topic. It's an amendment to the Township's Committee capital budget, because so that the acquisition of this property is reflected in our capital budget. This has to be amended. So this resolution is something that would also have to be adopted.
And that will be part of our consent agenda.
That is correct.
Very good. Okay. Let's take ordinance 2020-14. Greg, could you read that by title?
Bond ordinance to authorize the acquisition of real property by purchase or eminent domain for affordable housing purposes in, by, and for the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $4 million to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
Thank you, Greg. Is there a motion to introduce? And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Greg?
Mr. Mayor, I did not hear who moved and who seconded, please.
Sorry, I fell over.
I seconded. Who moved it?
Crazy.
Tracy Ness moved and Celeste seconded.
Thank you.
You?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fanaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes, and the The public hearing will be scheduled for the August 27th special meeting.
Thank you, Greg. The next item is ordinance 2020-15. Greg, if you'd read that by title, please.
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the acquisition by purchase or condemnation of real property shown as Block 128, Lot 2 on the Township Tax Map and commonly known as 522 Southern Boulevard, now owned by Kronos Holding LLC.
Thank you. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Very good. Greg, can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fondaco,
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness,
Yes.
and Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes, and the public hearing on this will also be scheduled for August 27th.
Thank you very much. Which brings us to the consent agenda. Greg, if you would read us those resolutions, if you would, please.
We have on this evening's agenda, Resolution 2020-180, payment of bills, 2020-181, approving meeting minutes, 2020-182, approving executive session minutes, 2020-183, refunding overpayment of taxes, 2020-184, awarding contract for 2020 road resurfacing project, 2020-185, amending capital budget, and 2020-186, renewal of liquor licenses.
Thank you.
Are we
Could I,
to remove the executive session minutes from the consent agenda?
and vote on those separately?
Or I'll just abstain from that one?
We can do a separate vote. Luckily, this should be the last one we have to do for a while, but yeah, we can have a
Yeah.
separate.
Very good. So this will be a motion to introduce all of the resolutions in the consent agenda except for the executive session minutes 2020-182. Can I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Very good. Greg?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fondaco,
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness,
Yes.
Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes. And
And
then,
then separately, can I have a motion to introduce Resolution 2020-182, which is the executive session minutes? A motion to introduce
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Greg?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fondaco,
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz,
I will abstain.
Deputy Mayor Ness,
Yes.
and Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-187, waiving subdivision application fee. Greg, could you read that title, please?
Resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, waiving subdivision application fee, and I believe Mr. Cruz wanted to address this.
Very good. Albert, could you give a quick explanation for this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As you may recall, a few meetings ago, you authorized the township engineer and myself to appear before the planning board for a subdivision of the skate park property. This is the same thing you referred to at the beginning of the meeting when you said that the planning board was going to hold a public hearing on the subdivision application for the skate park. You originally authorized the engineer and myself to appear before the township committee, to appear before the planning board. In preparation for that application, the township engineer and I had a conference call with the engineer for Arbor Green at Chatham and the attorney. And as a result of that conversation, the conclusion was that it would be more cost effective for the developer to prosecute that application than for the township to prosecute it. And there was a coordination that the developer would make that application to the planning board. Because there's a cost savings to the town in terms of Mr. Rushby's time and my time and appearing before the planning board for this, making this application, it is appropriate to waive the subdivision application fee for this applicant. Not the escrow fees, but simply the subdivision application fees, because this is a township responsibility. We're subdividing that property in order to be able to convey it. When the developer originally appeared before the planning board, you may recall that this was a larger tract that was going to be conveyed to the developer. Now it's only about a little over an acre that is going to be conveyed. So it makes perfect sense for the developer to do this. It's really an amendment to their prior application. And I recommend that the subdivision fees be waived, but not the escrow.
Thank you, Albert. And we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-187.
So moved.
Second.
And a second, Tracy. Very good. Any discussion? Very good. Greg, can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Findaco,
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Nunes,
Yes.
and Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. Which brings us to our second hearing of citizens and petitions. Again, this is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which were not topics or scheduled for public hearings tonight. The same guidelines apply. Please raise your hand and be recognized. Please give your name and address when you are recognized. We will not take any of your 5 minutes while you're asking questions or making comments, but we'll save our response until the end. And your residents are limited to one comment of up to 5 minutes in each of these separate opportunities for public comment. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and speak, please do so now.
Yes. Dan, you're now live if you want to identify and give your address.
Okay, Dan Miller, Green Village Road. Earlier you were talking about debris removal. To the best of my knowledge, the county never does debris removal on county roads. We have Southern Boulevard, Shumpike, Fairmont, Myersville, Lewanika, Spring Valley Road. I don't know if I missed any, and of course, Green Village Road, which are all county roads. Would it be possible to let us know, which it's a ton of residents, when the township would be including us in the schedule so that, you know, everybody doesn't put out a bunch of stuff out in the front just to see that it doesn't get taken away. So that's the one request. The other thing I wanted to say was thank you for the electronic sign that was out by the firehouse. It isn't there any longer, but I know that in the past it was mentioned it was a rotating schedule with that sign. Would it be able to, you know, show up every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever? Because I do know, you know, and Mrs. Ewald was 1,000% right when she said, you know, it's very difficult, like with the leaf blowers. I do know from local business owners and from even people down at the post office and so forth, the bike riders, they asked about it, they inquired about it, so it created discussion. And, you know, it might even be a thing to put up in other areas where you're having issues with the leaf blowers, and just to remind people, create discussion. When you create discussion, you get two things. You get people who are just going to ignore it, and you get people who are going to say, you know what, maybe it's a good idea to just kind of stay a little quiet, or maybe I won't start blowing my leaves when I know the neighbor's working, so on and so forth. But the debris removal is the crux of my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Bob, is there anything that we can?
Dan, I did have a discussion, as I mentioned, with DPW Director Richard Young regarding the local streets cleanup, which will be hopefully ending by early next week. And from there, they will be discussing it with the county. They have talked to the county in other areas. If we can get a schedule out there, we'll be happy to do it.
Now, I thought we had addressed this. Can you provide an update?
What Committeewoman Schwartz said was correct, but our goal is if we don't get an answer from the county, is that as soon as we're finished with what we're doing by midweek, we were just going to swing by through the county roads. So our goal is to be finished with all of the pickup by next Friday.
Yeah, one of the things that happened, one of the last times that we did the brush pickup, I believe with well, I can't remember what storm it was now, was that nobody, was that the one the chipper broke? There was no liaison, I think it was pre-you, Bob, but there wasn't any connection with the county. So people would put all their stuff out on the roads and there was no coordination going on with the county. So with such a large storm in this instance, we talked amongst ourselves and said, well, if the county can't get there in a timely fashion, then DPW and Rich Young and his guys would be willing to just go and do it for the benefit of residents.
Right. Yeah, I talked to Richard this afternoon about this very thing. The reasoning that they have to put the county roads second, number one, it is the county's responsibility, so we will give them a chance to do the right thing. But number two, and Bob, if I'm not mistaken, we actually will bill the county for our services, and therefore we have to keep our hours separate. We can't combine doing local roads now on our dime and commingling the billable time with the county's work that we're doing for them. So we'll get our local streets done, and if there's no progress being done by Morris County taking care of their roads, we will get to it. We don't want our residents to suffer.
Thank you, Karen. And then, so just the bottom line then for Dan is that if Morris County swings into action, that's beyond our control to really predict what their timetable is. We can always hope, but they haven't in the past. And if it is us doing it, we will tag them on at the end of our doing our local streets, which is a little bit difficult to promise with exact accuracy because that's going to depend on weather and the size of the piles as they get to specific streets. But the best guesstimate is that by the middle of the week, we should be finishing the local streets and we would swing right into the county roads right after that with the goal of finishing by the end of next week. As long as Dan and other people on county roads really realize that there are a couple of qualifiers there and they really should put it out as quickly as possible to take advantage of the one pass that either the county or our local DPW will be making. Anyone else with their hands up, Greg?
No, we do not have any other hands raised at this time.
Very good. Going once, going twice, going three times, we'll end the public comment session. And that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. I accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone, and good night to everyone in the audience.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night,
Bye now.
everybody.